Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how to crochet this easy vest which can be made in any size from baby to adult. So thank you very much for watching and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. So we are going to start off by making the front of our vest, and to begin the front you want to begin by doing a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once and then twice. Then take the first loop and pull it over the second loop, and then take the second loop and pull it all the way over your finger. You then want to take your crochet hook, go in through this space and pull tight. And there you have a slip knot. So once you have your slip knot, we are now going to make our foundation chain. And you can make your foundation chain as long or as short as you like, but the length of your foundation chain is going to determine the width of your vest. So you can make this vest in any size from baby all the way up to adult, and the width of the vest is going to be determined by how long you make the foundation chain. So for your foundation chain, you want to make a chain long enough to go across the bottom here. So what I would recommend doing is getting a t-shirt or a sweater in the size that you want your vest to be, and then chain until it is the length of the width of that piece of clothing. So if you are doing a baby or a child size like I am, your chain will be a lot smaller than if you are doing a teenager size or an adult size. And your foundation chain must also be an even number. So you can chain whatever you like as long as it is long enough to go across here and it is an even number. So you can chain 30, 38, 40, 60, 64, it's up to you. So make your foundation chain of an even number. So I have just finished making my foundation chain, and now we are ready to move on to round one of our vest. So we are now on to round one, and to begin this round you want to chain one. So we are chaining one on top of our foundation chain to begin this round. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go into the second chain from the hook and work one single crochet. So here is the first chain from the hook, and here is the second chain, and into this chain we are going to work a single crochet. So to do a single crochet, insert your hook down into the chain, the second chain from the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through the final two loops on your hook. So there we have one single crochet into that chain. So now into the next chain we are going to do one double crochet. So yarn over and go into the chain, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through two loops, and then yarn over and pull through the final two loops on your hook. So there we have single crochet, double crochet, and now into the next chain we're going to do a single crochet. So go into the next chain and work one single crochet, and into the next one we're going to do a double crochet. So yarn over, go into the chain and work a double crochet. And you want to repeat this all the way along for round one. You're doing single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet all the way along. So I'm going to go into the next chain and do a single crochet. Then I'm going to do a double crochet into the next one, and continue this for round one. So I have just finished working that all the way along for round one, and you should find that you finish off by working one double crochet into this last chain. So you finish off by working a double crochet at the end of the round, and we are now ready to move on to round 2. So we are now on to round 2, and to begin this round you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So now this round is the exact same thing as last round. We're going to do single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet all the way along. So we have chained 1 and turned, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So we're going to go down into this very first stitch here. So go down into this first one and do 1 single crochet. Then into the next stitch, yarn over, go into the stitch and do 1 double crochet. Then do a single crochet into the next stitch, like that, and then a double crochet into the next one. So we have done single, double, and continue this all the way along. So it's just the same as last round. And you should notice that you are working your single crochets into the top of the double crochets from last round, and that you are working your double crochets into the top of the single crochets from last round. So here we have a double crochet, so we're going to go into that stitch and work a single crochet. And then here we have a single crochet, so we're going to go into this one and do a double crochet, and then just continue this all the way along. So do single, double, single, double. So I'm just coming to the end of this round, so I'm going to work single crochet here, and then into the very last stitch at the end of the round I'm going to work a double crochet. So you finish off by working a double crochet into the stitch at the end. So yarn over, go into the stitch, and make sure that you're going into the stitch here and not the chain 1. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So go into the stitch and finish off by working 1 double crochet. So there we have worked that all the way along for round 2, and we're ready to move on to the next round. So we're now on to round 3 of the front of our vest, and this next part of the front of the vest is very simple. We are just going to repeat round 2, so the round that we just did, again and again and again until we get to here. So you want to keep repeating that round again and again until your work is this long, so until you reach up to where the arms start or the sleeves. So you want to keep repeating round 2 until your work reaches this part here, so where you want the armholes to start. So if you are doing a baby or a child size, then you may not have to do very many rounds. You may just have to do 14, 15, 16 rounds, something like that. But if you are doing an adult size, then you will need to do much more. You'll need to do a lot more rounds. So you can work as many as you like, but just keep working them until you reach where you want the armholes to start. So to begin each round, you chain 1 and turn. So that is how we're going to begin every single round. So you chain 1 and turn, and the chain 1 never counts as a stitch. And then we're just going to work single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet all the way along. So start off by working a single crochet into the first stitch, then do a double crochet into the next one, then a single crochet into the next, a double into the next, and do this all the way along. And you should notice that you are still working your single crochets into the double crochets from last round, and that you're working your double crochets into the single crochets from last round. It's really important that you keep doing that, and then you work all the way along and you finish every single round with a double crochet, and then repeat it again. Chain 1 and turn, and work all the way back, single crochet, double crochet, then chain 1 and turn and work back, and keep doing those rounds until you reach where you want the arms of your vest to start, or where you want the armholes to be. So I have finished repeating round 2 and I have reached where I want my armholes to start. And I would recommend that you jot down how many rounds you did in total, so that when you come to working the back of your vest, it makes it a lot easier. So just write down how many rounds you did in total. And then once you have finished working those rounds, you now want to fasten off. So pull your yarn out and your hook and then cut your yarn. So I'm going to cut my yarn like this, and then leave a tail to weave in or work over later. And now we are ready to move on to the upper part of the front of our vest. So we are now on to the upper part of our vest, and in this part we are going to cut in for the armholes. So we're going to make the armholes, and we're also going to make the V-neck. So to start off, what you want to do is you want to turn your work over like this. And we are now going to skip some stitches for the first armhole. So now you want to either skip 4 or 6 stitches depending on what size you are doing. So if you are doing a baby or a child size, you want to skip 4 stitches. So skip 1, 2, 3 and 4. But if you are doing a teenager or adult size, then you want to skip 6. So skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So depending on what size you are doing, you want to skip either 4 or 6 stitches. So as I am doing just a little baby size here, I only need to skip 4 stitches. So you want to count right from the end here where we fastened off. So count 1, 2, 3 and 4, but you may be skipping 6, so you may need to count 2 more, but I just need to skip 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then you want to go into the next stitch, so insert your hook into this stitch like this, and take your yarn, so go with the same colour as you were using before, the same yarn. Place it over the end of your crochet hook, pull it through, and then chain 1. So chain 1. So there we have skipped our first set of stitches for our first armhole. So this section here is going to be part of the first armhole. And now we are ready to move on to round 1 of the upper part of our vest. So we are now on to round 1, and this round is very simple. We are just going to do our pattern of single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet all the way along until you get to either 4 or 6 stitches from the end. So if you are doing a baby or child size, then you want to work that all the way along until you get to 4 stitches from the end here. But if you are doing an adult size or a teenager size, then you want to work all the way along until you get to 6 stitches from the end. And that way both of your armholes will be even, because you will have skipped the same number of stitches on both sides. So we have skipped either 4 or 6 stitches and attached our yarn into the next one and chained 1. So now you want to go down into this stitch, and you should find that the stitch you're going down into is a double crochet. So we need to go down into this stitch and work a single crochet. Then we need to go into the next stitch and do a double crochet. Then do a single crochet into the next one, a double crochet into the next, and again you should be working your single crochets into the double crochets and your double crochets into the single crochets, and continue to work your pattern all the way along until you get to either 4 or 6 stitches from the end, depending on what size you are doing. So I have just finished working that all the way along, and I have stopped 4 stitches from the end. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. And you need to make sure that you are not counting the chain 1 at the end as one of those stitches. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so it may be easier to kind of count this way and to count double single, or so you may be skipping 4 or 6, but I am just skipping 4. So there I have finished working that all the way along for round 1, and you can see that we have skipped equal number of stitches on both sides. And you should have finished off by working a double crochet. So the last stitch that you work should be a double crochet. And if you have done that, we are now ready to move on to round 2 of the upper part of our vest. So we are now on to round 2 of the upper part of the front of our vest. And in this round, we are going to start working the V-neck. So we are going to start adding in the neckline of our vest. And from now on, the front of our vest is going to be worked in 2 sections. So we are going to do 1/2 at a time. So we're going to have 1/2 of the V-neck worked first, and then we're going to attach our yarn and then work the second half in the exact same way. So we are working 1/2 and then a second half. So to start off, you want to count the number of stitches that you have across the top at the moment. So start on the last stitch that you just worked and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to the very last stitch that you worked here. And this does not include the stitches that you skipped, and it does not include the chain 1. So you're just counting the double crochets and single crochets from last round. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 all the way along, and you should find that you have an even number. This number may be 38, it may be 30, it may be 46, it may be 70. It doesn't matter, but you must make sure that it is an even number, and it should be. And then you want to take that number and divide it by 2. So say you have 38 across, you want to divide that in 2 to get 19. Or say you have 70 across, you want to divide that in 2 to get 35. Or if you have 34, divide that in 2 to get 17. If you have 36, divide that in 2 to get 18. So you want to take your number and divide it by 2. And then you want to take a stitch marker. So you could use one of these, or you could use a paper clip or a safety pin or just a piece of yarn in a different colour. And you want to go to where you finished off last round. So right at your very last stitch. And then we are going to count back that number. So count back that half number. So I have 24 stitches across the top here, and half of 24 is 12. So I need to count back 12. So count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But you will have your own number. It may be 50, it may be 16, it may be 20. Just count back to your half number. And then once you get to that stitch, so this here is my 12th stitch from the end, insert your stitch marker into that stitch to mark it, like that. So we are going to work this half here first, and then once we have done this half, we're then going to work this half, and that is going to give us our V-neck. So we are now ready to move on to round 2 of the upper part of the front. So we are now on to round 2, and to begin this round you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And we are now going to work our pattern along. So our pattern of working single crochets into the double crochets and double crochets into the single crochets. We're going to work that all the way along until we get to the stitch before our stitch marker. So here is our stitch marker, and you want to work that all the way along until you get to the stitch before that one. So I have a double crochet here, so I'm going to go down and work a single crochet into that stitch. Then I'm going to work a double crochet into the next one, a single crochet into the next, and do this all the way along until one before the stitch marker. So I have worked that all the way along and I have stopped one stitch before the stitch marker. So now you want to remove your stitch marker, and we are going to work a stitch called 2 single crochets together. So when we do 2 single crochets together, we are doing 2 single crochets, one into each stitch, but we are not going to complete either of them, and then we're going to complete them both together at the same time. So what you want to do is you want to go into this first stitch here, to go into the next one, and yarn over and pull up a loop as you would with a normal single crochet. But usually we would yarn over and pull through these 2 loops here. But you do not want to do that. You want to move on to the next single crochet. So insert your hook into the next stitch, and this is the stitch that our stitch marker was in, and pull up a loop. So there you should have 3 loops on your hook, and we have 2 incomplete single crochets. And now you want to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to complete the stitch. So there we have done 2 single crochets together. So we have completed round 1 of this half. So now we're ready to move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start off this round by working 2 single crochets together. So just like we did at the end of last round, we're going to start this round by working 2 single crochets together. So go down into the very first stitch here, go down into the stitch and pull up a loop. And then you want to go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. So there we have 2 incomplete single crochets, and yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So there we have done 2 single crochets together. And now for the rest of this round, we're just going to continue with our pattern of working a double crochet into every single crochet, and then working a single crochet into every double crochet all the way along. So we have a single crochet next here, so that means that we need to do a double crochet into that one. Then we have a double crochet, so we need to work a single crochet into there. Then we need to do a double crochet into the next single crochet, and a single crochet into the next double crochet, all the way along. So I have just finished working that all the way along for that round, and if you look closely you can see this is the start of our V starting, so we are decreasing this way. So every time we work 2 single crochets together, we turn 2 stitches into 1, so we are decreasing by 1. So our rounds are getting shorter and shorter, and it's from here that the stitches are being taken, and that creates a V-neck. So what we're going to do is we're going to always work our 2 single crochets together at this side, and that will cause the V-neck. So now we're ready to move on to the next round. So to begin this round, what you want to do is you want to chain 1 and turn. And now we're just going to work our pattern of single crochet into every double crochet, and then double crochet into every single crochet until you get to 2 stitches from the end. So if you look carefully at our work here, this is the chain 1, which does not count as a stitch, so do not count this. And then we have 2 stitches from the end, so you want to keep working the pattern all the way along until you reach this point, so 2 stitches from the end. So we have a double crochet here, So work a single crochet into that stitch, then work a double crochet into the next single crochet, a single crochet into the next double, and continue this until you get to 2 stitches from the end. So I have worked that all the way along and reached 2 stitches from the end. And now to finish this round, we are going to work 2 single crochets together. So go into the first stitch and pull up a loop, then go into the next stitch and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook, like that. So 2 single crochets together. So there we have completed that round and we're ready to move on to the next one. To begin the next round, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So to begin this round, we're going to start off by working 2 single crochets together. So like I said, we are always decreasing over this side. So we need to start off by working 2 single crochets together. So go down into the first stitch and pull up a loop. Then go down into the next stitch and pull up a loop. Then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And then you want to continue with our pattern all the way along. So we have a single crochet, so we need to work a double crochet into that one, then a single crochet, and just continue working single crochets into the double crochets and double crochets into the single crochets all the way along. And you should find that with each round you do, the rounds get smaller. So I have finished working that along for that round. So I have gone all the way to the end. And you should find that with each round you do, your rounds get shorter and shorter. So in every single round, when we do the 2 single crochets together, we are turning 2 stitches into 1, so we are cutting out 1 stitch at the end here of every round. So you should have 1 less stitch in each round that you do. So we have finished that round and we are moving on to the next one. So now for the next few rounds, what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat the last 2 rounds that we just did again and again and again. So the last 2 rounds is where we worked our pattern all the way across. So where we did single crochets into double crochets and then double crochets into single crochets. So we did that all the way across and stopped 2 stitches from the end and then worked 2 single crochets together. And then the next round is where you chain 1 and turn, do 2 single crochets together and then work the pattern all the way across. And you want to keep repeating those 2 rounds again and again and again until you have just 7 stitches across. So with each round that we do, we are going to have less and less stitches in each round. So you want to keep repeating those 2 rounds, the 2 rounds we just did, until you decrease to where you have just 7 stitches across. And this is going to come up like this and form our V-neck on this side. To begin the first round, you want to chain 1 and turn, just as we did before. And now we're just going to do our pattern all the way across until 2 stitches from the end. So here we have 2 stitches, 1 and 2 at the end here, and we're going to stop right before these. So work our pattern. So I'm going to go down into the double crochet and work a single crochet, and then I'm going to go into the single crochet here and do a double crochet and do this until 2 stitches from the end. So here I am 2 stitches from the end, and remember the chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so you want 2 actual stitches, and then I'm going to work 2 single crochets together like that. So there we have the first round, so that is a repeat of the first round, and now we're moving on to the next one. So chain 1 and turn, and begin by doing 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches. So work 2 single crochets together and then continue with your pattern along. So we have a single crochet here, So we need to go into this stitch and do a double crochet. Then we need to do a single crochet and continue this all the way along. So I have finished working that all the way along, and now I need to do my next repeat. So work the pattern all the way along till 2 stitches from the end and do 2 single crochets together. Then do 2 single crochets together, work the pattern back. Then do the pattern, 2 single crochets together. Then do 2 single crochets together and work the pattern back up. So keep repeating those 2 rounds again and again and again until you have 7 stitches across the top. And the number of rounds that you will need to do will depend on how long your foundation chain was at the very beginning. So if you were doing a baby or child size and you didn't chain very many to start with, then you may only have to do 1 or 2 or 3 rounds until you have just 7 stitches across the top. But if you did an adult size, it may take 5 or 6 or 7 or maybe even 10 rounds, 10 or 11 rounds until you have just 7 stitches across the top. So just keep repeating those 2 rounds until you have 7 stitches. So I have finished doing those repeats and I have 7 stitches across the top. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 stitches, and the chain 1 and turn does not count as a stitch, so you want 7 actual stitches. And at this point, this is how wide our straps are going to be. So our straps on either side of our vest, of the front of the vest, are going to be 7 stitches wide. So if you have a look at my grey vest here, which I have already done, these are the straps, and this section here is 7 stitches wide. We do have a border on either side, but the main part in the middle is 7 stitches wide. And if you do not like that, and say you were doing an adult vest and you want the straps to be a little bit wider, then you can stop whenever you like. You could stop when your straps are 8 stitches wide or 9 stitches wide or 10. It's up to you, but for my straps here, I have stopped when I have 7 stitches, but you could stop whenever you like as long as it is more than 7. Once you have reached the point where you have just 7 stitches across the top here, we are going to move on to finishing this half of the front of the vest. So what we're going to do is we are going to chain 1 and turn. And now this next round is very simple. We're just going to work our pattern all the way across. So we are not doing 2 single crochets together anymore. You just want to work your pattern of working single crochets into double crochets and double crochets into single crochets all the way along. So you may be starting off on this side like I am, or this side, depending on how many rounds you had to do, but just work your pattern all the way across. And the 2 single crochets together at the end counts as a single crochet. So you need to work a double crochet into that stitch. So we have chained 1 and turned, and the chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and I am starting off over this side here. So I am starting off with my 2 single crochets together. So I need to go into this stitch and work a double crochet. So I'm working a double crochet in the 2 single crochets together, and then I have a double crochet here, so I need to work a single crochet into this one. Then I have a single crochet, so work a double crochet, then a double, so work a single crochet, and do this all the way along. Single, double, single, double, single, double. So I have come to the end, so I'm working a double crochet in this last stitch. And you should find that you work 7 stitches in this round. So if you had just 7 stitches across the top before, you should still have 7 stitches in this round. We're not decreasing anymore. And now for the rest of this half of the front, we're just going to repeat that last round. So the round that we just did, chain 1 and turn, and then do our pattern all the way across. again and again until you reach the very top of your vest, so where you want your vest to stop. So if you take your piece of clothing that you are basing your vest off of and you line it up to where the armholes are, you want to keep going with this round until you reach the very top. And I would make a note of how many rounds that is in total, as when you come to doing the other side, it will make it a lot easier. So chain 1 and turn to begin each round, and then just work the pattern all the way along. So I'm going down and I'm going to work a single crochet, then a double, then a single, and do this all the way along, then chain 1 and turn and go all the way back, and keep doing this until you reach where you want your vest to stop. So I have finished repeating that round and I have reached where I want my vest to stop, so right at the top here. So now I'm going to fasten off, so pull my yarn out and my hook and cut my yarn. And you may want to leave a long tail when you cut your yarn, as you can then use this tail to sew up the top of the vest, so to sew the front and back together. And once you have done that, we are now going to move on to the other half of the front of our vest. So we are now moving on to the other half of the front of our vest. So you want to take your work like this, so that the side you have done is on the left. And we're going to come over here to this side, and you want to go to this very end stitch. So go to the stitch at the very end, so not where you skipped. Go to this one at the very end here and insert your hook into this stitch. So go into the stitch, take your yarn, place it over the end of your hook, pull it through, and then chain 1. So we're going to chain 1. So there we have attached our yarn into this corner, and we are ready to move on to round 1 of this half. This half of the front is worked in the exact same way as this half. We're just going to repeat those 2 rounds which we did down here to create the V-neck. So the rounds with the 2 single crochets together, again and again, until you have just 7 stitches across. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off on round 1. So we have attached our yarn and chained 1, and the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So now we're just going to work our pattern all the way across until 2 stitches from the end. So you can see that this stitch here has been worked into. So this is the last stitch of the other half. So this here means that this is the last stitch of this half. So we're going to go all the way along to here, leaving these last 2 stitches at the end free. So we're going to start off by going down into this first single crochet here and working a double crochet. Then work a single crochet into the double crochet. Then a double crochet into the single crochet. And do this all the way along until 2 stitches from the end. So I have finished doing that all the way along, and now I have 2 stitches at the end here, and into these 2 stitches I'm going to work 2 single crochets together. So just as we did for the other side, work 2 single crochets together. And there we have completed round 1 of that side, and you can see we have the V forming here, and we're ready to move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this round 2 is the exact same as last round. We're going to start off by doing 2 single crochets together at this side. So our 2 single crochets together is always in the center. So do 2 single crochets together over the first 2 stitches, and then do single crochets into the double crochets and double crochets into the single crochets, all the way along. So I have finished doing that all the way along, and I went to the very end, and at the end make sure that you do not go into the chain 1, as the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So there we have the first 2 rounds of the front of this half of the front completed. And now for the next part, just keep repeating those 2 rounds again and again until you have just 7 stitches left. So just like last side, with each round we do, we will have 1 less stitch. So keep repeating those rounds until you have just 7 stitches across the top. And if you stopped with just 8 stitches or 9 stitches across the top on this side, so like I said, if you were doing an adult size, you may have wanted to do that to have a wider strap, then you must do the exact same thing on this side. So you should have the same number of stitches across the top, and I am stopping at 7. So chain 1 and turn and do your pattern all the way across, then do 2 single crochets together over the last 2 stitches, then chain 1 and turn, do 2 single crochets together and go all the way back across, and keep repeating those rounds until you have 7 stitches. So I have finished repeating those rounds, and I now have just 7 stitches left across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now for the rest of the other half of this front, so the rest of this half, you just want to do the same thing as we did on this side. So we're going to repeat rounds of chain 1 and turn, and then just working our pattern all the way across, and keep repeating those rounds until you reach the top. So until it is the exact same length as this side. And I noted that I worked 5 rounds on this side, so I know I need to do 5 rounds for this one. So begin each round with a chain 1 and turn, and then work our pattern all the way across. And remember, the set of 2 single crochets together in the first round counts as a single crochet. So keep doing that until you have finished this side. So I have finished working those rounds, and now I have this side, which is the exact same as the opposite side. So there we have finished the front of our vest. So now you can fasten off, so pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn on this side, and I would recommend leaving a long tail, as you can use that end or that tail to sew up the other side of the top of your vest. So there we have done the front, and now we just need to move on to the back. So we are now on to the back of our vest. And to begin the back, you want to do the exact same thing as the front. So you want to make a slip knot and then make a foundation chain, which is the exact same length as you did for the front. And then you want to do round 1, so round 1, which is exactly the same as the front. So to begin round 1, you chain 1, so you want to chain 1 on top of your foundation chain, and then do single crochet, double crochet all the way along. Then you want to do round 2, just the same as the front, so chain 1 and turn and do single crochet, double crochet all the way along. And then keep repeating round 2 again and again and again until you reach where you want the armholes to start, and then fasten off. So that is what I have done here. So it's the exact same as the start of the front to where you reach where you want the armholes to be. And then once you have done that, this is what you should have. And we are now ready to move on to the next part. So to begin the upper part of the back of our vest, we're going to do the same thing as we did before. So you should have fastened off here, and then you want to turn your work over. So turn it over, and then we're going to count in either 4 or 6 stitches. So you want to do the same thing as you did for the front. If you counted in or skipped 4 stitches, then count 4 in now, and if you skipped 6, then you need to count 6 in now. So I skipped 4, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Then insert your hook into the next stitch. So we have skipped either 4 or 6. Take your yarn, place it over your hook, pull it through, and then chain 1, like that. So there we have attached our new yarn. And now we're just going to work our pattern all the way across until either 4 or 6 stitches from the end. So work single crochets into double crochets and then double crochets into single crochets all the way along until you get to where you need to stop. So we're going to start off by going down into this first stitch here, which is a double crochet, and working 1 single crochet into this stitch. Then go into the next single crochet and do a double crochet and do this all the way along. So I have done that all the way along, and then I have stopped 4 stitches from the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, but you may have had to stop 6 stitches from the end. And now once you have done that, we are ready to move on to round 2 of the upper parts of the back. So we are now on to round 2, and the rest of the back is very simple. We are just going to repeat the last round that we just did. So chain 1 and turn, and then do our pattern all the way across. Then chain 1 and turn and do our pattern all the way across. Again and again and again, until the back is the exact same length as the front, so to where you want your vest to stop. So we're just repeating these rounds. So to begin each round, chain 1 and turn, then go down into the first stitch here and do a single crochet, then do a double crochet into the next one, a single crochet into the next, a double crochet into the next, and do this all the way along. And then once you have come to the end of this round, chain 1 and turn and go all the way back, and you want to stop here. So we are stopping in the last stitch of the round, so do not go into the stitches that we skipped. So go all the way across over this shorter section and keep repeating those rounds until your work is the exact same length as the front. So just continue to repeat that for the back. So once you have finished repeating those rounds, this is what you should have. So you can see the back is the exact same length as the front. And then you want to fasten off. So pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn, leaving a tail to weave in later. And now we just have to sew up the vest, so sew the front and the back together, and then work a border. And I will show you how to do that. So we are now moving on to sewing up our vest, and we are going to sew our vest up along this side here, so along this seam, then along the top, then along the top, and then back down along this seam here. So we have 4 sides to sew up. So to sew up our sides, you want to take a nice long piece of yarn in the colour you were using before, so use the same yarn. And you want to then take a yarn needle or a tapestry needle. So take your needle, and then you want to line your work up. So here I have the front and the back, and I'm going to line my stitches up perfectly. So this is really important that you make sure that they are all lined up as well as they can be. And then you want to go in through the bottom at the end. So go in through the very end here and into the same stitch on the opposite side and pull your yarn all the way through. And we are going to join our sides using the whip stitch, as this gives us a nice join which you cannot really see at all. So to do the whip stitch, we have gone all the way through, and then we're going to come back around to this side, so the same side that we just went through. So we've gone all the way through, back round, and then go into the next stitch and to the exact same stitch on the opposite side. Go all the way through again and pull your yarn through. I'm going to pull my yarn like this, And then I'm going to come back around to this side again. So with the whip stitch, you always go through the same side. So we're always going through this side here. So go back round here, in through this side and through to the same stitch on the opposite side and go all the way through. And keep doing this all the way up along the side. So keep doing the whip stitch. So you go through this side, through to the same stitch on the opposite side and all the way through, back through to this side and through, all the way along. And then when you get to the very end, go into the very corner stitch here and just go back through it a couple of times to make sure it's nice and secure. And then you have sewn up that side. And then you want to sew up along the opposite side and then along the straps at the top using the whip stitch. So that is how you sew up your vest. So once you have sewn up your vest using the whip stitch, the last thing that you want to do is you want to do a border. So you can do whatever border you like, but I did a half double crochet border and I think it really made a difference and made all of the V-neck and the armholes and the bottom nice and smooth and even. So all I did for the border is I started off by attaching my yarn into the back of my vest here, and then I worked one half double crochet into each and every single stitch around, so one half double crochet into each stitch, and on the sections here when you were going into the side of the stitches, just work them evenly. So you can see I just worked one or two half double crochets into the side of each stitch and then work a slip stitch into the first half double crochet that you worked and then fasten off and weave your end into the inside of your vest. And then I did the same thing on both armholes and then the same thing all the way along the bottom. Attach the yarn into the back, do one half double crochet into each stitch around, do a slip stitch into the first one that you worked, fasten off and weave your end into the inside. And then you want to weave all of your ends into the inside of your vest. And we have finished. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. And thanks again for watching. Bye!